Hello everyone, welcome back to Politics Corner. And in this episode, what we're going to do is look at part two of the negatives of the Northern Ireland Executive Committee and how it makes them ineffective in terms of governance. In the first part, we looked at a range of problems pertaining to the mandatory coalition that both nationalists and unionists have to abide by as a result of the Good Friday Agreement. But we're going to look at a number of issues now. We're going to look at finance, we're going to look at basic competency, and we're going to look at some structural issues. And a big issue for the Northern Ireland Executive is finance or lack of finance. Everything that a government does requires money. And the more money that a government has, the greater the range and the better the quality of the services that they can provide. So conversely, the less money that there is, the narrower the range of services they can supply, and also an increasing lack of quality, or decreasing lack of quality, I suppose we should say. Now, Northern Ireland is funded by a block grant. It's the pocket money, if you like, that we get from Westminster. And it is a proportional amount based on a thing called the Barnett formula. It makes up about 94% of our funding. We cost about £10 billion a year to run. And because the British government has been going through a period of austerity from 2011 to up until very, very recently, we then suffer proportionately from that. And if you look at the decrease in the budget, in some departments it's around 14%, which is an enormous amount. We recently had Robin Swan testify before his committee of the Assembly and say that health, for example, needed another 550 million just to survive for this year. Education said they needed 440 million. Nicola Mallon has said that she doesn't have enough money to fix the streetlights for more than 6 months of the year in the Department of Infrastructure. And a big problem is that the executive does not have any revenue raising powers of its own. It can adjust the rates, but it's loath to do that because it has such a big impact on businesses. And it could introduce water charges, but the time when that was even mooted, it was so controversial that no party will even touch it. So this lack of finance is a big, big problem, and it means that basically all departments can do less. A second issue is the basic lack of competency. To say that our ministers have been less than stellar would be a bit of an understatement. You all know about RHI and the scandal that occurred there and the huge, colossal potential waste of money that occurred there. It wasn't the first. There was a job skills programme a number of years ago that cost 550 million. That's 1/20th of our entire budget. There have been other competency issues too, even though the focus between 2011 and 2016 of the programme for government was on reducing unemployment. That actually went up. We have the situation of the Red Sky scandal in the Housing Executive under Social Development Minister Nelson McCausland. They did claim during that period, the Executive, that they achieved 11 of their key promises. Well, the Irish News looked at that and found that it wasn't based in any way in fact. So to say that they're delivering, again, is really, really open to question. Then there's the structural issues. One problem is that we, up until 2015, did not have an official opposition. Now, if you think about what an opposition does, an opposition is there to scrutinise the government, scrutinise its actions, and represent an alternative for the government. But we didn't have one. All five major parties were in the executive up until 2015. And so there isn't the same amount of pursuance of the government in terms of when they make mistakes. There's also no alternative. We already know what five parties are going to be elected whenever we come to elections. So, in other words, elections aren't judgments on the performance of government in the way that they should be. Now, we had a bit of a hiatus in that between 2016 and 2020 when the SDLP Alliance and also Unionist Party did go into opposition, but now they're back in the government, so the same thing applies. There's also the problem of the Sinn Féin DUP carve-up that actually marginalises the other parties. I mean, Sinn Féin and the DUP are so strong that basically they're the ones that decide what happens within the executive. If Sinn Féin and the DUP can agree on something, it happens. If a proposal is there and either Sinn Féin or the DUP are against it, it doesn't happen. And the other parties see themselves marginalised. And it actually impacts on their ministers as well. Sometimes we could say their ministers might be in office, but they're not necessarily in power because Sinn Féin and DUP are definitely calling the shots. There are other criticisms. If you look at a lot of the legislation that the executive has put forward, it isn't even really original legislation for Northern Ireland. A lot of it is copying legislation that's already pertaining in GB. I mean, the RHI legislation was a direct copy of similar legislation that was enforced in England, except when they did the copy and pasting, they left out the bit about the finance controls. Pity that. So to say that our executive has done well, as we said, would be an understatement. So there are issues of competency, there are structural issues, and there's the big finance issue. There's not a lot of scope for them to deliver. And maybe we're expecting too much, but I suppose the other point is we are stuck with a system that wasn't built for delivery, for good governance. We were stuck with a system that was built for ensuring that there would be a power sharing executive. That was its main priority, not the delivery of effective government. And perhaps that's the biggest underlying reason why we don't have effective government in Northern Ireland. Our system isn't created to ensure that. That's us. So please subscribe and enjoy.